Hi guys, and welcome back for a new video. This little tutorial is dedicated to a dear friend of mine who wants to start out with watercolor pencils after seeing the waterlily I have done recently. After talking to him, I decided to do a full-blown tutorial here to get you started with watercolor pencils. And in this place I would also like to thank my best friend from Rattendesign / Lychee Love, who borrowed me his 60 bucks of Albrecht Dürer pencils to try out. I'm gonna put an info card with a link to his channel up in the corner. But now to chapter 1 of this video. All the materials you need to get started with watercolor pencils. They're basically the same things you'd need if you'd work with pan or tube watercolors, minus a few items. First of all, get yourself some good watercolor paper. I think it's better to invest in quality in the first place instead of buying cheap paper and then getting grey hair when the paint doesn't behave like it should. I myself am using an Arches cold press pad here that I had ordered the other day. I still need to become friends with this paper, but I think it's okay so far. Second point, you can use any paintbrush you want, except for coarse bristle brushes, of course, that are not suited for watercolor. But I found that these pointy round ones that all watercolor artists use are really just the best thing to go with. I ordered myself a 3-piece set from the brand I Love Art by Gerstecker, and they're doing just fine. It doesn't always have to be the most expensive ones. Third, you will need a container for some water and some tissues or really anything to wipe your paintbrushes off on. I like to use 2 tissues, one for soaking the water off the brush and another one for lifting off paint in areas that I want to lighten. Also, you won't need another container with clean water for working with watercolor pencils, because I found the water doesn't get nearly as dirty with using pencils than it does with using pan watercolors. With the pan watercolors you will need another jar with clean water if you don't want to muddy up the colors you're working with. Point 4. If you want to wipe a bigger part of your paper, you might want to get yourself some masking tape to tape down your sheet onto a board. Best get yourself some tape for sensitive surfaces here, because other tapes might tear your paper apart if you pull it back off. The one I have here is said to be for things like wallpapers and stuff, so for sensitive surfaces. Point 5. This little thing is not a necessity for working with watercolor pencils, but if you want to lift off some pigment from the lid and mix it up with another color, a small palette like this can come in handy. You can of course use a plate too, or anything you've got. I just found that porcelain is really the best solution, because on metal or plastic the paint puddles shrink together in tiny dots, and it's hard to pull out just a little paint or see what you have mixed up. While on the porcelain, the paint spreads out more. Number 6. Masking fluid is not a necessity also for the beginning, but can come in handy if you want to keep areas of your paper white. Simply apply it with a brush to the areas that you want to keep white and let it dry. Then paint over it and rub it off with your fingers or an eraser. Be careful though to use an old brush, because this stuff tends to ruin your brushes. Some watercolor artists soak their brushes with bar soap first, but I personally don't like to do that because I'm a bit hesitant to get soap onto my paintings. Point 7, another important thing of course are some watercolor pencils. You don't have to buy the Albrecht Dürers. You can use any brand you like. just don't buy too cheap ones because they're often not very well pigmented and can behave weird when applied. Same principle here for the beginning like with the paper. Rather get yourself some quality stuff in the first place instead of growing grey hair over cheap and low quality pencils. And side note on the difference between colored pencils and watercolor pencils, because I have been looking that up. The leads of usual color pencils consist of a mix of pigments, cellulose derivatives as binder, talcum or kaolin as fillers, and a mix of oils and waxes to make them water resistant. The watercolor pencils consist of pretty much the same, but they have added emulgators and tensides to make them water soluble. If you want to know more how pencils are made in general, have a look at my pencil tutorial video that I did a while ago. I put a link for you into an info card into a corner of this video. And point eight, last but not least, of course, then when you're a little more advanced than me, you can also go and use salt and all kinds of stuff for texture in your works, but I am just not there yet, so I'm gonna skip that one.